Okay, let's get started for today's session. A very warm welcome to everyone to the next in the Youth Disability Advocacy Research Network series of webinars. My name is Blaise Murfitt, and I'm very happy to be hosting you here today in this next session. If you are coming back, welcome back. If it's your first time in joining one of these sessions, very warm welcome to you, and you are most welcome to this program. Today's session is going to be focusing on bridging the road to equality. Safe is inclusive, and it will be led by our friends from Yours Youth for Road Safety and the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety. And I'm going to introduce the amazing team in just a moment before they start into their session. But before I do, please just a reminder that when the presenters are talking, if you could just ensure to keep your microphones on mute, just so that we can focus our attention on the presentations and presenters. However, I know that the team are very happy to receive any questions, comments, etc. Through their program. So if you do want to do that, please just use the chat box if you can, or you could raise your hand through the Zoom application, or you could turn on your microphone and just briefly ask a question. So a reminder that please keep your microphone off in general when the presentation is happening. But if you would like to ask any questions or make comments, please just use the chat box or the raise hand function, or you could turn on your microphone as well and just politely interrupt us and ask a question. So any of those are possible at any time. All right, so with that, I am now going to take a moment just to present our esteemed panel of presenters today on this session, which, as I mentioned, is Bridging the Road to Equality, Safe is Inclusive. I'm first going to be handing over in a minute to Stefania Meniti, who's the Advocacy Director at Yours Youth for Road Safety. Stefania has a bachelor's in political science and international relations and a master's in international development cooperation, and has over a decade of work experience in international cooperation and promoting human rights and gender equality, meaningful youth engagement, and worked in international NGOs and the UN. She's also participated in research and publication in different fields. The latest contribution was about youth engagement and road safety with Lancet's Child and Adolescent Health academic journal. Steph, you're very welcome. We also today will be hearing from Ibrahim Ozturk, who is a traffic and transportation psychologist and currently a research fellow at the Institute for Transport Studies at the University of Leeds, just up the road from where I am. He attained his bachelor in psychology in 2015 and holds master's and PhD degrees in traffic and transportation psychology from the Department of Psychology, Middle East Technical University in Turkey. He is interested in human factors in driving, especially individual differences when investigating the interaction between road users and vehicle technologies and their antecedents, including distracted driving and culture at the organization and national levels. Ibrahim, you're very welcome. We will also today be hearing from Olufunke Afosajay, who is graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in English from Obafemi Awolowo University in 2018. And she also possesses a certificate in gender-based violence in emergencies course from the American University in Nigeria, American University of Nigeria. She also has a State National Youth Service Meritorious Award for service from the Governor of Yobe State, Nigeria. And she recently won the Nigerian Presidential Honors Award. My goodness, Olufunke, congratulations. That's wonderful to hear. And again, you're very welcome. We'll then be hearing as well today from Jacob Smith, who is a diehard visionary movement builder. He has his own consultancy service in road safety and mobility justice, which delivers high impact community organizing for transforming mobility access in Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. He is currently the executive director of the National Organizations for Youth Safety. And since 2014, he has presented at over 190 conferences and led projects in 12 states, including mobilizing youth for safe and sustainable communities. Jacob also serves, I don't know how you've got any time for all this, Jacob, but he also serves as a regional leader of the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety and works across the nation, I'm guessing the US, to mobilize young people to meaningfully engage in participation for road safety and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Jacob, you are very, very welcome. And I should also call out here, supporting from the team, we have Sana Kasanwe, who is also here supporting from the team. And I don't know if I spotted Maolin Makatangai, but Mao, if you're here, you're very welcome as well. So with those brief introductions now, let me pass over to my good friend Steph, who's going to be leading you through today's session. Steph, over to you.
Thank you so much, Blaise, and thank you for the network for having us today. As Blaise said, I'm Stefania Minici, I'm Italian. I have long, straight black hair, and always people told me that I smile with mouth and face, so very nice to meet you all. Today, we are going to talk about different topics, but it's a cross-cutting topics leading us to human rights field, so we are very honored and glad to be part of this beautiful network. The main words for this session today are inequality and road safety. As you may know, at yours, Youth for Road Safety, we are working with thousands of young people across the world in order to deliver and demanding road safety in different ways, with their meaningful participation in the policy-making process, but also with the youth-led initiative called Local Action. We also launched last year Yours Academy. That is a learning platform that you can go sign up and follow different modules and just get more knowledge about road safety, SDGs, sustainable mobility, and also global health agenda. And so we also have different CapDev session, and so we just want to invite you all to join the network whenever you want. You are very welcome. Let's start the session. And as I said, for us, it's a tremendous pleasure to meet you all from the different movements of human rights, but also youth advocates from with disabilities. So we think that if we work together, we are stronger to make our voice heard. And let's start. We want to hear from you some questions. I know that in the chat already some people just write about who you are from, but we want also to know more about your typical mode of transportation and what does inequalities and road safety mean to you. I just post in the chat. You can just reply by wording, also with some emoticon. I saw that we have different people coming from all over the world, from America, from Africa. So thank you so much for joining us. And we can just start in playing the anthem. So go, Sana. In the meanwhile, we're waiting for the answers.
I am more than just a statistic. You see, thanks to my existence, the society can now be optimistic about the future. But with all these road crashes, how do you expect me to get to my future? Huh? My father used to say, work hard and make your life an easy one. But the road to my destiny is not an easy one. They say that life is what you make it. But how will I make it when decision makers won't let me be a participant? I can see what is happening to Mother Nature. Climate change is all around me. I don't need a lecture. No, I don't want to sit back. I want to take charge. All I need is opportunity. It doesn't take much. To the future. Will you walk with me? I won't stop believing it. I need a voice. Sit down. Swing it once. Reclaiming it. Say, reclaiming it. Reclaiming it. I'm finding this shit. reclaiming it. It's a progressing, it's a focusing progression, it's a changing nation, wabele education, kubiya kuzisa yekubo, kulungamya abatambula abavuzi n'abasabaza amateeka ku kkubo. Mama Africa okusanya w'omutondo kutima tami kwekotudde abavubuka naddala abakyala twetaaga participation mu kukola decision ezero generation. To the future. When you want to be,
So some like
I want
going on phones.
to be hard, working together to make the earth better.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you all. I saw in the chat there is different, different transportation in your city. Most of all, you say that it's like using public transportation. Other is it's basically go with the bus on the public transportation, but using bicycle as well. And I would like to just put in that Jessica told that driving and inequality means that Charlotte doesn't have much of a public transit system. So if you don't drive, you are kind of stuck. Yeah, this is the problem of road safety infrastructure. And what means road safety is to an inclusive environment that is accessible for all road users to move around without fears and road danger. So today, we want just to explain to you the linkages between road safety and inequalities. And I'm starting inviting our speakers with the different, background as Blaise introduced before. They will showcase how it's important that road safety is embedded inside the broader development agenda, but also the global health agenda. And how it's related to inequalities, because we always deserve to have to live in a safe and secure and a healthy environment. So now I will invite to speak Ibrahim. Ibrahim is the main writer of the policy papers that we are so launching today, Bridging the Gap in Road Safety Inequality, and will explain the linkages. And he will focus also about on the case of the impact of the road crashes in African youth regarding disabilities. So Ibrahim, tell us about why you are passionate about inequalities, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Stefania, for the kind introduction, and thank you, Blaise, for starting the meeting and then inviting us to this nice group of people. First of all, I must say I saw some of the comments in the chat, and they really nicely summarized our policy brief, and then that makes me quite happy because we did the right thing, and then we kind of hopefully that will be quite useful at the end of this presentation, and then hopefully they will be able to achieve certain things together for a good cause. So I was previously introduced, but I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Ibrahim Öztürk. I am a postdoctoral research fellow at the Institute for Transport Studies. My background is in psychology, so I'm kind of bridging the gap between like kind of transport and psychology together. But today I am wearing a black sweater with a colorful shirt, and I also have a little extra weight with me, so I want to get rid of that, but that is not our concern for now. But today I will summarize the policy brief to you, and we can continue with the next slide. So before talking about SDG 10, or in general, what do we mean by SDG 10? And where does SDG 10 fits in? Because for us, SDG 10 has a special place and is connected to other SDGs in different ways. And there's either there might be a correlation with SDG 10, inequalities with other SDGs, or there might be some kind of causal relationship, which I will explain in a couple of slides. Next slide, please. So before we talk about the details of our policy brief, I want to first explain what do we mean by inequality and why we are here in a general sense. I will give you a quick dictionary definition. Inequality can be defined as the unfair difference between groups in the society when some have more wealth, status, or opportunities than others. So inequalities can be observed in different aspects of the society and can be related to gender, income, healthcare, education, economy, but those are not the only ones that can be related to. So next slide. As emphasized in many of our activities, the main target of our focus or main target of our activities is road traffic crashes and their consequences. Why is it important to address road traffic crashes? Because we are talking about a global public health problem that claims 1.35 million lives every year, and then leaving 50 million people injured with varying degrees of injuries throughout the rest of their lives. Some of these injuries result in long-term impact, and apart from that, these crashes can also have much more direct or indirect social and economical effects on the society. In terms of inequalities and road traffic crashes, we see data highlighting different age, gender, income, ethnicity, rurality, or disability data showing data for inequalities. What does that mean? That means certain groups in the society are affected or experience more negative outcomes in comparison to others. Overall, road traffic crashes are currently the leading cause of death for young people. I believe which majority of us are either belong to that category or are doing many things for that category. And we are talking about road traffic deaths happening like 93% of those deaths happening in low and middle income countries. And there are many different, in terms of regions, there are differences between road user groups, which I will be talking about in detail in a couple of slides more. But all of these differences are kind of not affecting our just travel behavior, but also affecting people's health, income, and many other aspects of the society, because transport has a core place in the society that connects us to reach other facilities and other aspects. So next slide, please. So when we are talking about inequalities in transport, inequalities that are reflected in access to transport modes, travel behavior, road user behavior, and crash involvement and fatalities. For example, when we are talking about pedestrians, only 12 of the journeys are happening on safe roads, and 1 million people live in areas that maybe more than 2 kilometers away from nearest usable road. And we are talking about 88% of pedestrian journeys happening to be on the low quality roads, which kind of highlights all the inequalities. And as I saw in the chat, many of us are part of the transport system as pedestrians at one point throughout our journeys. So that is kind of the crucial source of inequality that affects our lives. So next slide, please. something that is more relevant to our audience, and maybe that is not surprising, but road users with disabilities are one of the most vulnerable road users group because inequalities affects in the transport context kind of limits users' access to travel modes, decreases the likelihood of travel, and then causes to experience more negative experience during their travel, and frustration and safety concerns, and when decreased likelihood of using public transport or in other transport. So all of these kind of reflects also itself in higher risk of crash involvement. And that overall story affects people's quality of life and access to many other resources that is essential to establish bare minimum living standards. Next slide, please. Since we are talking about regional differences, we also need to talk about Africa, because we are talking about a region that is least motorized, but a region with highest fatality rate. Africa is particularly dangerous region for vulnerable road users, where pedestrians, cyclists, and power two-wheelers are at greater risk, and especially due to lack of safe and accessible infrastructure. That might be stating the obvious, but these crashes are the leading cause of disability in Africa and worldwide. Sure. Next slide, please. So I have probably 2 or 3 more slides that I will explain what is needed to do and why we have this policy brief. As a result, within this policy brief, we have developed a number of proposals, including a better understanding of special needs, need for more data, accessible education, economic healthcare services, safe and accessible pathways, affordable and accessible public transport, and youth-led initiatives and activities. Most of these suggestions are also relevant to people with disabilities, different communities, and policymakers, but we hope that these suggestions can be tailored to address local needs and serve as an sample of solutions, because people who experience those inequalities or those negative experiences are the ones that can explain those needs in a perfect way. So we need people to get involved, and then we need to work together to better understand the problems and then create solutions together. So next slide, please. So I would like to finalize my talk with clarifying how to get best of this policy brief. It is crucial to note that this brief presents an overview of literature on transport inequalities. The aim of this is to provide a guide to highlight all transport-related inequalities and their impact on society. Additionally, we wanted to provide a literature can be further expanded upon to include more direct or indirect references. We hope that this policy brief covers the topics relevant to evaluating inequalities with the aim of providing an impact document to basically operationalize transport-related inequalities and offer some solutions to improve those problems. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Please note that the solutions and suggestions we are providing are the examples that may prove effective and require otherwise they may require further development to address some specific societal needs, so they need to be tailored. So as Stefania said, we are here and we want you to get involved. If you have any questions, if you have anything in your mind that you want to discuss, feel free to reach us, and we can move the next slide, Stefania, and we can have a nice Q&A now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. So I am curious because I want to hear more from you. What kind of action young leaders can take, to promote equality and, and accessing this problem that we saw that all in the chat, they saw that it's access, the problem access on road safe infrastructure. So it's the main lack of problem that are facing. But what do you think that are different action that you as a young leader could do in your community, at city level, at, at national level, in order to try to make this a safe and secure environment more accessible for all?
So that's a really difficult and good question. I believe there is no right answer, but the first thing I would say is you have to get involved. So you have to be in it to win it. And what is important here that we are told every region, every policymakers or every country, they have different agendas for road safety and they have different priorities. So that may not always reflect the problems experienced by youth or experienced by certain groups of society. So the first thing is to highlight those problems. It may be official or unofficial. It may be through groups or activities like we are doing right now. So we have to highlight the problem. We have to get involved with the society, and we have to work with other partners. I'm sure there are people who would like to hear those problems. So that is the first step I would suggest to move forward. Other than that, youth has the energy. So if they come together and there are great things that people can do together. So it is important that to know that we are not alone, and then we are in this together. So when we are talking about any potential problem or solution, it has always some benefit to the other members of the society. So but when we are talking about transport system, there is a small but here, because you have to think the overall system. So some of the solutions may negatively affect the other transport modes, or they may not be complements to the overall transport system. So, but all of these solutions first needs to be discussed, and then so basically we have to talk about that first.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. I saw that there is a discussion in the chat, and basically, if you are going to pick this argument with some decision makers or policy makers, you should have evidence base. So this is why that the SDG champion like Ibrahim, Olufunke, and others start working on the policy papers on SDGs and road safety. And I will put the link here in the chat, guys, so you can just have a look at it and use it as an advocacy tool just to raise awareness about the importance of meaningful youth engagement, road safety, but also advocate, because as a young advocate with disability, you must be join us and working together to make sure that your ideas, because you are facing different challenges, so you are the ones that can tell to the policymaker how this policy change should we make, because you know what is needed to take, right? So just as echoing Ibrahim's voice, just take action in your community with your peers and try to find evidence base to knock the door to the policymaker at local level or national level. And thank you so much, Ibrahim. I think that I have no more question in the chat. I just summarize it, but all done that, because it might be that some other people wants to make you some questions. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you. I'm going now to introduce you Olufunke. is our SDG 5 champion, but she was also supporting Ibrahim in the writing of this policy paper. She's an expert on gender equality and also inequalities and road safety. And today, Olufunke will introduce us with the different components of an inclusive mobility system, especially for people with disabilities. So Olu, over to you.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Steph. My name is Olufunke Elizabeth Asochai. I'm an SDG 5 champion with the Global Youth Coalition, and I'm also a regional leader for Africa. And it's so excited to be at this webinar. So welcome, everyone. You can go to my presentation, please, Sana. Okay, so the title of my presentation is Inclusive Mobility for Everyone. You know, at the Global Youth Coalition, we prioritize safety, and we believe that none should be left out, irrespective of your irrespective of your circumstances, socioeconomic background. We are so concerned about everyone, you know, accessing safe and secure mobility. So my focus actually in this presentation will be on the people living with disability in Africa. In the introduction, I'm going to be highlighting the facts about people living with disability. 1 in 6 people worldwide have a significant disability, and this is expected to increase. So people living PWDs are everywhere, and this is expected to increase. In Africa, where I am from, the most common types of disability in Africa is the visual impairment, hearing impairment, and the physical impairment. And people with disability are at high risk of death due to due to poor health condition. And this risk includes those associated with mobility and road usage. Now, the focus of my presentation would be on how can inclusive transport system prevent and ameliorate the difficulty people with disability face, and thereby ensuring road safety through equality and equity. Next slide, please. Inclusive mobility system. What do I mean by the inclusive mobility system? Inclusive mobility system is that mobility system that requires that the need of everyone, regardless of their disability, regardless of their social circumstances, are considered from the onset of any transport, pedestrian infrastructure, maintenance, and scheme. Like, these people should be, everyone should be consulted before there could be any plan at all. However, I also have it here that a transport system that allows ease movement of everyone and mobility for all people. Inclusive mobility system is the one that allows ease movement to anywhere. People can go to the market, people will be able to navigate social gathering, access give people access to quality education. There's no restraint to movement. So that is what I mean by inclusive mobility system. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this session, I'm going to be talking about 3 top challenges faced with PWDs, that is people living with disability in Africa. Lack of affordability and accessibility in mobility. is a big challenge to PWDs in Africa. And according to a UN report, this has really, affected their life in a negative way. Lack of this equitable access to safe and secure mobility for youth living with disability in Africa, it pervades in many African society. So even navigating school, marketplace, social gatherings, becomes a big issue for them. They are not, able to navigate schools, marketplace, and none of these, compulsory places like people who aren't without disability. And in the next slide, we we highlighted the recommended solution to these to the earlier mentioned challenges. So how do we provide a lasting, a sustainable solution to this? Is by creating affordability and accessibility in mobility. In our policy brief, that's the SDG 10 policy brief of the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety, because we have propounded so many policy briefs, and this policy brief is not meant to be dumped. It's meant to be adopted, and is a clarion call to action. So according to our policy brief at the Global Youth Coalition, we highlighted that government should invest in a multimodal transport system and also boost financing of affordable accessibility of public transport options that accommodate the needs of everyone, and also, people living with disability. One of the fantastic things about multimodal transport system is that the planning not only it doesn't only ensure safety, but it also fosters equitable access to inclusive mobility. And our goal is for everyone, to access inclusive mobility regardless of circumstances. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so another challenge faced by people living with disability, lack of acceptance and support. Lack of acceptance and support. Public attitude is very, very crucial to the people living with disability in Africa. So the public attitude really determines their daily life. In terms of negative attitude, people living with disability, they are really experiencing this negative attitude, especially from the healthcare workers. And this has led to marginalization, discrimination in road safety. However, this negative attitude towards people living with disability have been indicated as a barrier for their participation in several activities, such as physical activities, fitness, educational settings, and political settings. Public attitude is very, very crucial, even to people who are not living with disability. For instance, if the attitude I received when I joined this webinar is not really welcoming, or it's kind of there's this kind of discrimination or marginalization. So people with disability, they need, positive attitude from the people of the community. They are everywhere, so we are supposed to, accept them, support them, and do the needful. The next slide, please. So for the challenge, for the earlier mentioned challenge faced by people living with disability, here is the recommended solutions. It is recommended that all stakeholders should promote healthy attitudes towards people with disability, especially when road usage and safety are involved. The government, people at the Ministry of Health, healthcare workers, when they come for checkup, let's give them the same treatment we will give to people who are able, who aren't with disability. However, according to our SDG 10 policy brief, promoting Promoting inclusion, equitable treatment, acceptance, and equity for PWDs is in accordance with the targets of the SDG 10. And I believe we all know the goal of SDG 10. So, and also we recommended that more research, especially in Africa, should be carried out in this as far as promoting acceptance and support of the people living with disability is concerned. You know, promote acceptance and support is very, very crucial. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah. Talking about lack of equitable economic opportunity for people living with disability. Of course, in Africa, we understand that unemployment is a very big issue. Like in Africa, like people struggle to get jobs, but when it comes to people living with disability, this is really a big challenge. This is really a big challenge. That's why you see some of these people living with disability on the road, begging for alms and all of that. But according to statistics, it is understood that the rate of unemployment among disabled job seekers double that of able-bodied for jobs. Also, they are at high risk of fatality, if they lack ability to cater for their health and after encountering road accidents. Also, the lack of economic power among them in turn can lead to poverty, and when this occurs, they might not be able to purchase road assistive tools, which will enable them to navigate wherever they want to go. Next slide, please. So how can we alleviate this challenge? Yeah, I have optimizing opportunity for people with disability. It is mandated that we give them the opportunity to train, to work, to join organizations. Most of the organizations in Africa, I mean, how many disabilities do we have in this organization? I mean, and I can even say, like 1 of 10. It's even 1 of 10. So they should be considered. We are not to focus on their disability, but focus on them. Within them, they have something great. They have potentials. So let's give them an opportunity to explore their potentials. Also, it's suggested that this is directed that all policies and laws should be formulated to ensure, equitable economic opportunity for them so that they can optimize their mobility. And also, government should support people, the poor living with disability with assistive equipment. There was a time one of the stakeholders in Nigeria was doing that, right? We don't know if they still continue, if they are still into that. So also, post-crash treatment is very, very essential. So according to our policy brief, the SDG policy brief of the Global Youth Coalition, we recommended that government should increase investments in post-crash response to reduce the health and economic burden of people of road traffic crashes on PWDs. That is, after they've experienced road crashes and all of that, they will be able to access healthcare. Healthcare is very, very important. Healthcare is a priority. Healthcare should be prioritized among people living with disability. It is their right, so they should be able to get free healthcare even after any crash. And lastly, next slide, please. So in conclusion, inclusive facility individuals with disability risk experiencing further marginalization, poverty, and sense of despair. According to our SDG policy brief, which is being launched today, we highlighted that inclusive, equitable infrastructure must be put in place. It's a mandate. It must be put in place to ensure accessibility, affordability of transport, which thereby helps to promote equity. Also, I want to remind us that at the Global Youth Coalition, Global Youth Coalition is an organization that we prioritize youth a lot. We believe that youth, they have the right to be consulted. If any decision is being made, they have the right to represent. We don't believe in tokenism. We believe in equal participation of everyone. So representation of people, representation of vulnerable youth, that is people living with disability in the transport system, should be ensured. They should be part of the decision of making what they want. We should ask them. They shouldn't be sidelined. Our call at our call to government, not only government in Africa, but also globally, is to ensure that our policy brief is being embraced. We don't want the kind of policy brief that will be dumped, because we understand that a lot of policy briefs have been propaganded, but are we using them? So it should be adopted, and it should be a clarion call to action, so that together we can make a better place for people to live in, regardless of their disability. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Olufunke. I'm just reading at the chat, and I would like to share 2 examples. So Karen from Dominican Republic just told us that in Dominican Republic, for organization and together with government, a plan is being developed for people with reduced mobility. So far, only some buses have ramps for people with wheelchairs. So Karen, thanks for sharing this example, and please share more examples that you might have in your own project or your communities. And another from Omar is that the government is in charge of building bus sessions, as we just trying to raise awareness and ensure that they are accessible. So based on this example that you guys have provided in the chat, I want to use the question that Blaise posed about how do you position youth, disability and transport safety to government? So are you participating in this policy change, or it's not so easy to you to get engaged with policymakers to make it happen? So let us know about this, because, it's important that in the new global plan for the new decade of action, you guys, the youth, it's the main stakeholder. So you have the knowledge, you have the power, and the safe system approach talk about that. The people, the human being, need to be at the center, and people with disabilities need to be at the center as well, and the young people. So it's important that you try to find and joint efforts with the different coalition and make your voice heard. Also, there is different advocacy tools that you can use. For example, now WHO is working on the new global status report, so you can use as an advocacy tools, and this will be available later in December. So, there are different ways. Just be in touch with your peers and try to find out the best advocacy strategy that you can to reach out to government. Always use evidence-based, but we said the policy papers and this global status report are already evidence-based, that you can go to your decision maker locally and try to find a bilateral meeting and ask your call to action. Say, we want to invest more in youth-led initiative that support young people with disability and make safe roads and accessible for everyone, for example. And then I want to pose a question to Olufunke. Olufunke, what do you think that we can ameliorate the challenges faced by people living with disability in Africa as a young woman from Africa?
Oh, okay, thank you very much, Steph. So one of the ways we can, ameliorate the challenges faced by PWDs in Africa is to, accept them and support them. the negative attitude should be eradicated. Then we shouldn't focus on their disability. Oh, this person has a visual impairment, she has an hearing impairment. No, we are not focusing on that. Focus on their potentials. So by the time that negative attitude is being taken away and they are being accepted, then we can listen to their needs. Like then we can inculcate it in the decision making. Oh, they need this, or they need that. But first, the acceptance and support is very, very important. And it has to do with everyone. Everyone should ensure that we support them and accept them. Then once acceptance and support is put in place, then the rest is solved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olufunke. And now I will introduce to you all Jacob. Jacob Smith is the regional leader from the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety. He is also a disabled activist passionate about creating space where marginalized youth feel safe existing on the street and can build life experience the full of joy of movement. Today, Jacob will share with us his local action project. The local action is the seed funding that the Global Youth Coalition is providing every year for 17 young leaders from the Global Coalition. And we will have the next call for next year on January, if you are looking to apply. The project that Jacob is leading, it's about supporting the access of Black, Indigenous, and people of color and disabled community mechanisms to involve in the city policy. So this is like all a very practical case study on what we have been talking about, no? On how we can make sure that young people with disability can join the policy making process and make sure that their voices are heard, they contribute with the policy change. And specifically, Jacob and his team are working on, implement more an accessible pedestrian environment for all. So Jacob, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be able to be here with you all. I am based here in the US. I have Black hair. I'm wearing like a tan turtleneck. It's getting cold here in Colorado. So I'm really excited to be here and be able to share a bit about my work. So next slide. So I always like to start off with who I am, kind of uplifting my lived experience because that drives a lot of my work today. I'm 26 years old, but this is a picture of me at the age of 16. Time flies. And growing up, I was heavily involved in many organizations. I joined leadership organizations. I always wanted to make a difference in my community. And so this night, I was with my teacher and I had been nominated a national officer candidate to oversee over 200,000 young people across the country. Next slide. Unfortunately, that morning of my nomination, I had spoken to young people, challenging them to cherish every moment in life. And that evening, a drunk driver hit our school vehicle head on. She had previous driving while intoxicated tickets, so she was a repeated offender. But I was airlifted to the closest hospital as a 16-year-old. I sustained a traumatic brain injury, facial reconstruction. I have metal plates in my face now. Fractured back with rods, and it ultimately changed my life forever due to this injury. And I was left in a coma for nearly 3 months, and I had to relearn how to walk, talk, read, and even just the basic functions of life I had to relearn at the age of 16 in high school. And so this experience was extremely traumatic, as you can imagine, but also I had a choice, like as a young person who was already involved in the community, who wanted to make a difference, and my choice was to be better or bitter. And really, I made the decision to utilize my story to not only empower myself, but also empower young people across the nation and across the globe to not only care about how we can end road traffic injuries and deaths, but also how we can bring our own lived experiences as disabled people, as marginalized youth to the forefront of this work. Next slide. So I'm extremely grateful that this experience, I was able to network and connect with many organizations and drive my advocacy. Youth for Road Safety was actually one of the first organizations that found me on Twitter and found when I was young and good in Twitter. They found me and connected with me and really sought out to enhance my leadership experience and advocacy journey. And so a big part of my work is like how in every space that I'm involved in, how do I ensure that other young people know that they can ultimately make a difference utilizing their own experience. Next slide. So today we're talking about a lot of work. I see in the chat, a lot of folks are discussing, the inaccessibility, the lack of equitable spaces, the unfortunate traumatic experiences that we have within our transportation system. And this is a quote that really harnesses the focus around when we talk about transportation safety and traffic safety, it's more than protection from cars. And I believe this as a disabled young person. Like, we want protection from cars, but we also want protection as a disabled person. We want to be able to have public spaces where we can that they're not hostile and they allow us to have joy and freedom without people judging us for being disabled or having specific needs that we have. And so just as a challenge for each of you as you embark on your advocacy journey, to always seek out opportunities to uplift your own lived experience and ensure that we're advocating for a transportation system that can ultimately provide freedom and joy for all of us. Next slide. So these are three key principles that I use when we're discussing disability and like how do we ultimately embed principles into our work, especially for those who are not familiar with the lived experiences of disabled youth. How do we communicate to them our needs that, within our transportation system and really get to basic fundamentals? And so first, it's that all bodies are essential and bodies have strengths that must be met. So regardless of our abilities, our disabilities, our bodies, like, we have strengths and needs that must be met as individuals within our transportation system. Secondly, we are powerful, not despite our complexities of our bodies, but because of them. We're powerful because of the complexities of our bodies, and that should be acknowledged. And then third, our bodies are confined by race, ability, gender, sexuality, class, nation, state, religion, and more. And we cannot separate them. And that just gets to the root of when we discuss marginalized youth, especially BIPOC youth, disabled youth, we can't just leave one aspect of their identity out. Like, if there is a BIPOC person that is disabled, we have to acknowledge the inequities that they experience in their community. And we must acknowledge that when we're advocating for specific issues. Next slide. So I'd love to share one of my most exciting projects that I'm grateful to be working on, and that is our Transportation Equity Fellowship that is a local action of yours. And so this project is based in Washington, D.C. That's kind of where it's headquartered, but we have young people from across the country. And our goal really sought out to address the disproportionate impact of pedestrian deaths on Black, Indigenous, and people of color youth in the United States. The U.S. has a long history of redlining, inequities that affect these communities where they do not have access to safe, sustainable transportation systems due to these inequities. But furthermore, there's a sharp increase in youth who are dying because of lack of transportation, lack of infrastructure, lack of laws and policies, like the entire safe system approach that ultimately isn't protecting them. And so this fellowship seeks out to really train and equip young people to advocate on the local level for effective policies that ultimately transform their pedestrian environment. And so an important note about this program is that we really sought out to recruit young people who are not a part of this work, who didn't go to college majoring in urban planning, who didn't go to college majoring in climate justice. These are young people who we found as part of social services, as part of criminal justice impacted groups, as part of arts and culture organizations where they live within our transportation system every day, but they don't necessarily have the formal education. But we wanted to uplift their lived experience. And I think that's an important point to note, is that as an advocate, how do you effectively reach people who are not a part of this work, who are not attending these webinars, but are young people who have to deal with our transportation system? And these are 4 key areas of how we can do that. So when you're engaging in a project, think about who's in the room and who isn't. Emphasize the ability and knowledge of these people to solve their own issues. So there should be activities and icebreakers and guiding questions where they can think of how they can solve their own issues. And then always centering young people's humanity. Next slide. So an awesome opportunity that I'd encourage each of you as you think about how you can incorporate disability justice work and ensuring that you have accessible transportation systems into your work is hosting a walk and roll event. And so here we, in Denver, Colorado, we hosted a National Week Without Driving. And the whole purpose of National Week Without Driving was to encourage city officials, elected officials, the engineers, the city planners in our community to actually experience what it's like to go an entire week without driving. Oftentimes, our vehicles are a space for isolation. So when we are in vehicles, we're not able to see what people who are in wheelchairs or people who are visually impaired or people who can't afford to drive or are not able to drive due to disabilities, what they experience within our transportation system and how inequitable it is. And so this Week Without Driving included a walk and roll event where we paid young people and adults to meet us at a certain location, the location that was the most popular in the city, but also had the sharpest inequities. And we just took like a walk and roll. We had guiding discussions where we explained like, what are people experiencing? How does it feel to be walking on the street towards the bus? What inequities do you see? And city planners were there and city officials were there, and they've never been on this road, but they're making these decisions that are affecting our communities. And so it really uplifted our lived experiences, but also allowed them to see like, hey, if you want to change policy, you need to be listening to us. So not only did it encourage participatory decision making, but it also allowed them to change the way that they are working within our transportation system. So if you don't take anything away, I just encourage you to use a tactic like this for shifting decision making within your transportation system. Next slide. And so just really briefly, I wanted to share this this garden, which is something that I take into account in everything that I do. And I love gardens. I love flowers. They mean so much to me. And so so many times we talk about like what's going wrong and what's not happening. But I think it's important to, as advocates and as movement builders, to reimagine what our communities can look like and really think about that. Because if we don't continue that reimagining and redesigning, then ultimately we don't have anything to look forward to. So here are a few different opportunities of like advocacy tools to think about how we can incorporate disability work into our mobility system. Some of it includes sidewalks with curb and ramps and tactile pavings. Some of it includes accessible paths to transit stops. Like there shouldn't just be accessible paths, to a parking lot. There should be accessible paths to transit stops. Low stimulation streets, a very important aspect of like how, if we're having an open street that is vibrant, that has vendors, let's also make sure that there's low stimulation streets where folks that are triggered by high stimulation can still enjoy the open street spaces. Free public and accessible transport, and then community de-escalators. Like we all have different lived experiences and perspectives as we navigate our city transportation. And so having people within your city who understand what it means to navigate the transportation system as a disabled young person is important. And having that person on the bus that can be there, your advocate, is important as we build a better transportation system. So yeah, just think about, I would encourage you right now to just think about what would you like to see within your transportation system. If you could just wave a magic wand, what would be the best thing that you could bring to your transportation system? Next slide. So my last point is like you have the lived experience and you're experts of your own lived experience. So each of you in this room bring lived experiences. You're mentioning in the chat what you're experiencing within your transportation system. And so uplift your lived experience and know that you can bring valuable insight, experience, and creativity towards these key advocacy issues. And we need you a part of this movement. And so that's what I'll end off on. But if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Sana, can we just pause on the garden that for the Jacob presentation? So we just give few minutes to the audience to tune it. And please, if you think that something of the, of the suggestion that Jacob pointed in his presentation will work in your community or city level, just post in the chat. So we just have a look and read it. And I would like to all the panelists make one question. Have you seen project where there has been a change led by a disabled youth that based on your experience you want to share? Or do you think that there is like some other action or networks that youth with disability needs to take into account in consideration to make their voice heard? So I think that we can start, Jacob, from you and then with Ibrahim. Meanwhile, we try to get Olufunke with us because she has trouble now with the connection.
Could you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
If you just tell us about your experience, have you seen project where there has been change led by a disabled youth?
Yeah, definitely. So in our community in Denver, Colorado, I live in Denver and in Washington, D.C. In Denver specifically, we have a disability like pedestrian group. It's intergenerational, and something that we noticed was that there was a lot of lack of sidewalks near schools. So folks could not, and they weren't large enough at all either. And so folks got together, they recognized that we actually have a really bad sidewalk issue near schools. And so this community led a campaign that really pushed forward Denver Deserves Sidewalks. That was the title of the campaign. And it was really built off of a disability framework of like, if we want to have human dignity for disabled folks, we need to prioritize having sidewalks. The campaign was really empowering. And I think from a perspective of disabled young people leading it, it made it even more powerful. And it actually passed. We're still, as you know, the government takes forever to like implement something even after it's passed. So we still don't have sidewalks, but it's something that I think really shed light on the power of disabled youth taking a stance for something that they deserve. And it really pushed a lot of efforts across the city.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Sana, do you want to share the Jordan example?
Yes, actually, there was an architect that was impacted by an injury. She was involved in a car crash while she was an undergrad student. And after graduating, she started a project called Accessible Jordan. Basically, it's a website that identifies accessible public spaces, transportation services, restaurants, government buildings, to help people with disabilities know if this place accommodates their needs and if they can access it or not. And actually this project had like a big impact on people with disabilities in Jordan, because they felt like they now have a community and now they have a place where they can know where they are welcome, and it encouraged many restaurants, many cafes to be on that list. So they started accommodating their entrances, their facilities to respond to the needs of people with disabilities. And there are like many initiatives that also took inspiration from this project, and they are like ongoing. You can go to Accessible Jordan and learn more about other related initiatives as well.
Thank you so much, Sana. Ibrahim, do you have any example that you might want to share with us?
The first thing that came to my mind is from academia side. We have one professor who is also a disabled throat user. A couple of her studies, for example, directly focusing on that group of disabled throat users, and we saw a brilliant ways to approach and gather data. So that is not directly comparable with the other activities, but it is also a good way to show the variety of needs and how to approach and address those and present them in a more coherent way.
Amazing, thank you. So I invite now Sana to just, explain on how to join the Global Coalition, and then we will wrap up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stefania. First of all, I would like to thank everyone that joined the webinar today. And I know that many of you are not members of the Global Youth Coalition. So I would like to invite you to go to claimingourspace.org and then click join. There is an application form that you need to fill out in case you are between 16 and 35 years old. This is the ideal network for you to connect with like-minded youth and expand your knowledge about road safety, and also work closely with us to advocate with the local government in your country, so we can together generate an impact and have a safer future for our mobility systems. The second thing, I'd like to invite you to download our policy briefs. We have many SDG champions with us that work very hard to write policy papers that centralize road safety within the Sustainable Development Agenda. So if you go to claimingourspace.org, you will be able to access all these papers and many other resources that will help you understand the connection between road safety and the relevant sustainable development goals, and learn how you can use these tools to advocate with government and with decision makers, or even to raise awareness among your peers in your communities. And basically, this webinar is talking about how we can work collectively to reduce inequalities in transportation systems. So this is a very complex topic that we cannot cover, in an hour or two. So I'd like to invite you to learn more about how can reducing inequalities play a vital role in shaping safer and more inclusive transportation systems by downloading our policy brief on road safety and SDG 10. And we also have a learning platform, which is the Yours Academy, where you can enroll and start learning about road safety, and you can work on improving many skills that can help you contribute meaningfully to creating a safer environment for transport. Just go to www.yoursacademy.org. It's free of charge. You can, if you have like internet connection and a device, a mobile phone or a laptop, you can access many modules that can enhance your knowledge on road safety and other relevant topics as well. And I think this is a great opportunity to invite all of you to advocate with your governments to implement the recommendations of the policy briefs in your local communities. I can see a lot of frustration about governments and a lot of disappointment in the policies run by governments from many regions. I see comments from Latin America and from Africa, and there is a lot of room to work as youth advocates, and we need to push to have sustainable mechanisms where we can work closely with governments to generate this impact. And we need to be patient because, you know, advocacy change and policy change can take decades sometimes. But if young people have a way to participate, I believe they have a lot of things to bring to the table. So never stop your work, and always do your best to generate the impact that you want to see. And if you want to start your own project, the Global Youth Coalition offers a seed fund grant similar to the one that Jacob won last year, and that helped him, you know, fund a youth-led project in his city and work closely with his peers and also with decision makers. So if you are interested and if you have an innovative idea that you would like to work on next year, we are launching our new call to applications for local actions program next January. So if you go to our website, claimingourspace.org/local actions, you can learn about projects from the last 3 years. And you can also take a look at the application guidelines. So you can start preparing your application in advance. And the policy papers will help you a lot to understand how can you, you know, start a youth-led project that can connect road safety with other relevant issues like quality education, accessibility, gender equality, even climate action, and many more. So if you have any questions and if you would like to learn more about how to build a strong application, you can email us at coalition@youthforroadsafety.org. I'm going to leave this email address in the chat. And yeah, we are welcoming all your comments and all your questions. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you for all the speakers. Thank you, Blaise and Nettor, for inviting us. And we hope this session was inspiring to all you. And now you have more ideas on how to do to making advocacy for young people living with disability. And, you know, let's be together and let's claiming our space together. And thank you. And the floor is yours, Blair.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you very much for that, and really appreciate it. I'm going to now just wrap up today's session and talk about our next. But I did notice that our colleague Elenika from AD International is on the call today, and I wanted to see if she's able to turn on her microphone, because I know that the AD International is supporting many youth with disability across East Africa. And I'm sure that it is also focusing on some issues with transportation and some of the challenges that young people with disability face trying to just simply move around their cities. So I don't know, Elenika, are you able to turn on your microphone and maybe just give us one or two examples or thoughts on what you have seen in terms of the challenges, but also some of the ways that this is being addressed in East Africa? Maybe having some network issues. I don't know, Elenika, if you can hear me, just give it another moment to see if she can join. No, I think perhaps her network might be a challenge, but if she is getting on before I finish, I will give her the floor. So Elenika, if you do hear me, please do join us, and maybe your network might be a little problematic. But as I mentioned, I know that AD International are supporting many young persons with disability in advocacy right across the region, and I think there'll be many connections to the kind of work that yours and the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety are acting in and supporting, particularly there in East Africa, which I know AD International is focusing on. Okay, so I think maybe her connection is struggling. So let me then move to summarizing for today. Firstly, I wanted to just pull out a few key things for everyone here to remember in terms of what has been talked about today. We've had, all have many issues, challenges when it comes to doing advocacy, but it's great to hear today about some specific examples of advocacy that is taking place, but also amazing resources and assistance that is there for advocates to do work in your country and in your city. So the great team here today talked about a number of academies in terms of policy briefs, examples that are there to help you to do your work and to be more effective. They also talked even about potential for funding opportunities, which I think, again, is something that all of you should really look at and see as possibilities to further support your work as well. So it's really fantastic to hear these examples and also see that there are organizations out there that are willing to help and assist and recognize the significant challenge of transportation for persons with disabilities, and particularly to support young people to try and make change. I would also mention here that there are a range of different links and emails that Sana has shared there as well, and I recommend all of you look for those wherever you can. Before I finish off there, I do see a hand is raised from Happiness. Happiness, please go ahead.
Hi, Blaze. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
This is Elinek. I'm very sorry. My computer got a technical problem, so I couldn't speak. It's kind of stuck.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You heard my question, Elenika?
Yeah, I don't have any question, but I wanted to contribute on what you have asked regarding the transport industry, especially in Tanzania.
Go ahead.
We have a number of challenges in transport, meaning that they are not accessible, for example, for people with physical impairment, but also for generally for all people with disability, different type of disability. There is kind of negative perception from the public transport guys, meaning that they normally tend to make an assumption or perception that a person with disability using a public bus or a private, using a bus cannot pay for the fare, transport fare. Therefore, it's challenging. It's a bit challenging ability to access transport, meaning that they normally think that they don't have a fee for the fare, for the transport. So it's a bit challenging, and among the grantees, we provide them with the micro grants. They are working on advocating for the rights of persons with disability, covering the areas of transport as well, and they will have a number of community outreach to have some meeting with the bus conductors and the bus drivers. Yeah, in summary.
Great, thanks, Ellie. And did you say you also had a question?
No, I don't have a question. Thank you very much for the presenters and the very informative topic. We do appreciate.
Thanks, Ellie. And I'm sure that everyone here is probably very familiar with some of the key challenges that Ellie mentioned. I think we forget that it's not only safe, it's also accessible transportation. And of course, we know very well those challenges with public transport vehicles not stopping for persons with disability. That is a problem actually in almost every country I've ever worked in as well. So bringing that kind of that attention and focus to it, I think, is very important. So thanks, Ellie, for that, and thanks also for coming in there through Happiness's profile. Okay, so I wanted to then just finalize by saying three quick things. The first is Jacob left us with a very, I think, a fantastic thought, which was to imagine ourselves in a place where these type of issues are better addressed. What does that look like? What does it feel like? What does it seem like to be in a position where we are more empowered and then therefore have better access and safe transportation for young people with disabilities? And that's such an important and critical element of advocacy. is to not only get caught on the day-to-day small steps, but also to keep in mind, what is the bigger objective? What is all the advocacy actually doing? What is it leading towards? And we've talked in many of these webinar sessions about the importance of keeping clear on that broader objective. And even if you find yourself very busy, the key question to ask is the busyness resulting in the change that you're trying to get overall? And if it's not, then change what you're doing, because keeping a focus on that idea and that vision for what you're trying to achieve is so critical. And it's a mistake, in my experience, a lot of advocacy people make, is that it's busy, being busy is winning, but actually winning is realizing your objective. So it was a great thing for you to share with us, Jacob, and I think something for all of us to keep in mind as we finish up today. So then, before I thank our speakers for today, I do need to mention that the next of these webinars in the Youth Disability Advocacy Research Network will be on the 9th of November, and will in fact be hosted by our colleagues at AD International, and will showcase action and progress in youth disability advocacy campaigns in East Africa. Some of those campaigns that Elenika just mentioned that have been receiving funding. So please do look for notification of that next session. And Caitlin has also shared the project website there. So please do look for that on the 9th of November to hear some real great examples of advocacy in action through East Africa with the support of our friends at AD International. So with that, let me now say a big thanks to the team and in fact, our extended family at Yours Youth for Road Safety and the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety. A big thanks to you, Steph, Ibrahim, Olafunke, Jacob, Sana, and Mao. I see you finally made it in after I saw you in the waiting room. I apologize. But a big thanks to you all, not only for the presentation today, but also for being willing to open up and share and join and collaborate with our network and find more and more ways to bring young disabled advocates into this space and with real practical, actionable examples that you are providing today. So a huge thanks to you guys for that. And of course, a big thanks to all of the participants who have come here today as part of this network, which is of course led and supported by Bournemouth University, AD International, and the Arts and Humanities Research Council here in the United Kingdom. So with that, again, many thanks to everyone. I hope you have a wonderful and safe afternoon, evening, wherever you might be. We look forward to seeing you back here again on the 9th of November for the next of our sessions. And with that, many thanks and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.